Today we're looking at the NHL rumor mill and talking about a potential offer sheet for Blues forward Robert Thomas. Is he a prime target for other NHL teams? I also want to talk about Kirill Kaprizov in Minnesota and where things might be heading in that regard. We have a huge update on Evander Kane after doing a significant interview with ESPN. We have several more signings, PTOs, league news, and more. All that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a ton of news to talk about here today, a little bit in the rumor mill too. Let's dive right in and get started because we do have a lot to cover. I want to kick things off first with some news from the NHL. We have a lot of media going on right now. They're having different media days that are taking place, and a lot of information has been revealed. We did get confirmation from NHL insiders through talking to guys like Bill Daly that the salary cap is expected to rise by $1 million next season. I know many would like to see it rise more because a lot of NHL teams are impacted by the cap and are tight up against it. Makes it hard to sign players and give raises and all that kind of stuff. But hey, we're in a situation where they've lost a lot of revenue. The fact that they're getting any kind of an increase this soon, to me, is a little bit surprising. I thought it would be at least 1 or 2 more years beyond that before there was anything. So $1 million is $1 million. Every little bit helps, as they say. The NHL did also confirm and make official the outdoor game that I had mentioned a few weeks ago as being a likelihood between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Buffalo Sabres, which will be taking place in Hamilton, Ontario at Tim Hortons Field. So that'll be the Heritage Classic game, which will take place in March. So that is now an official event on the NHL calendar. And the NHL also indicated as well that when it comes to their players and all the rules around being vaccinated versus not vaccinated, it looks as though when the season starts, they're going to be somewhere between 98 and 99% vaccinated, which is a phenomenal rate. It's the highest amongst the 4 major professional North American sports leagues, and it's certainly a good sign that there won't be very many players that might be holding out or might be encountering restrictions as the season goes along. So that's only going to be somewhere around 10 to 15 players that may not be considered fully vaccinated when the season starts. We don't know, obviously, for privacy reasons, who those players are. There will be some teams, because we've already seen it kind of starting to be announced, that are able to say their team is 100% vaccinated. They obviously seem to be proud of that fact and want to get it out there. I know some reporters are doing it as well. I know there's a few teams, like I know Toronto, Carolina. I'm not really sure right off the top of my head who else, but I know there's probably at least 5 or 6 teams that reporters have confirmed the team is fully vaccinated. But like I said, there won't be very many players that aren't, which is good when it comes to all the different restrictions that they could end up facing. And I would imagine in the not too distant future, we'll start finding out who those players might be, or at least what teams at the very least. And we probably won't know the names of players, but what teams have players that aren't, that might run into different restrictions. I know there's also a lot of information coming out about arena capacity, at least in Canada. I know that's something. I know right now it's expected, but could change, that Alberta and Manitoba, so Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, are expected to be able to go to 100% capacity. But I know the COVID situation in Alberta right now is getting quite dire. It is not in a good position. And I know the government there just declared a new state of emergency. So I wouldn't be shocked if they end up changing that, but that's where things stand today. Vancouver right now is expected to be at 50%. Montreal had raised its arena capacities during the offseason to 7,500, which is a lot more than Montreal was allowed to have at the end of the playoffs. And that, as far as we know, may not be changing, at least not for the start of the year. Ontario hasn't officially said, but I know we've seen statements from the Senators saying that they were expecting to be at 100% capacity if they were able to be, that, but there was going to be a vaccination requirement. And that's the other thing, is I believe all Canadian teams, at least, and I know many American ones have as well, do have a rule about the vaccination requirements to be able to attend the hockey game. So I guess we'll see how all that goes when it comes to capacity, and obviously that's going to be a major difference maker in how much revenue they can make as well, to start recouping some lost wages that way. So we'll see what happens in that regard, but we'll wait for further updates here as we get a little bit closer to the season. The training camp's not too far away from starting. We did also get another big signing dump, I guess you could call it, from the New York Islanders. It seems like Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders only like to give things in large quantities this year. They've really made us wait on a lot of things. I'm surprised we kind of got Zach Parise as a bit of a standalone confirmation there, but they did confirm several signings today. Pretty well all these guys are mostly all going to play in the American Hockey League, but they could see some NHL time, and will certainly be in camp to at least compete for spots, and at the same time here, but will mostly be AHL mainstays. But you've got Otto Koivula, you've got Dmitry Timashov, Paul Ledoux, and Andy Andreoff all have, pro experience and all signed 1 year, 2-way contracts. And then you've got Cole Bardu, who has a 2-year, 2-way contract. So we got a whole bunch of guys there get signed by the Islanders, mostly for their AHL team. We also seen a situation where the Vegas Golden Knights signed a defenseman, Dylan Coughlin, to a 2-year, 1-way contract, which is a little bit surprising. $762,000, obviously a pretty cheap price tag, but given the limited experience, it was a little surprising to see him get the 1-way deal here already, but obviously they felt he's earned that. And we had a couple more professional tryouts announced today as well, with the Seattle Kraken inviting Scott Wilson, who of course previously played with teams like Buffalo and Pittsburgh. So he goes on PTO to Seattle, and the Islanders announced that Eric Gustafsson, formerly finished the year with Montreal last year, of course played with other teams like Philly and Chicago, etc. Gustafsson goes to the Islanders on a PTO. I know the Islanders have been rumored to be looking for that Nick Leddy replacement guy, but certainly Eric Gustafsson won't be him. But given their situation with the cap and what's out there in America right now, they probably don't have much choice to try to do it by committee and find a free agent defenseman like Gustafsson, or somebody who can maybe help a little bit and kind of hope their kids are able to step in and step up and play a bigger role. Obviously, they had to cut Leddy loose because of cap restrictions and as well as the expansion draft, and replacing him is going to be tough. They also want to add another goal scorer and have been linked to a guy like Tarasenko for a long time, but it just seems like that's going to be pretty much impossible to make those deals work now. So I would suspect that we'll probably, and I stress probably because you just never know, that they're going to go into the season with what they have now. We'll see what the Islanders do in that regard. Now, of course, like I said, we do have some other information to talk about here today, including Evander, Kane, Robert Thomas, and Kirill Kaprizov. Before we jump into that, I want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers, where you can get 20% off and free shipping on all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. I just wanted to quickly let you know as well, there was a period of time, probably for, I want to say like a day or so, where the merchandise shelf that sits below the videos here on YouTube that you can see on a variety of devices when you're watching the channel, there was a glitch that a lot of the merchandise options were not showing there. They are still fully available. That appears to be fixed. I know I was dealing with the merch provider and YouTube today trying to get that. It wasn't just me that was impacted. It was a glitch on the back end on the merchandising side that's been resolved. So all of that is still available. If you're interested, you should be seeing it on this video as you watch this here right now, and everything is still as it was. Now, moving on to the other content here for today, I want to start off with looking at the St. Louis Blues, and could we see an offer sheet for pending RFA centerman Robert Thomas? Now, we know they're in a bit of a contract standoff. They have not able to come to an agreement as of yet. Camp's getting closer. Doesn't mean something won't come to be. But the Blues are awfully tight on cap space, but they do have some options. Now, a lot of people I've seen say that the St. Louis has no room to sign Thomas, and even though it's kind of true, but not entirely. They have means to create some space. For example, they can take their roster, make it a little bit smaller, demote a few players to the minors, and create a little bit of space that way. And they also have the likelihood that Oscar Sundqvist is going to be going on LTIR to start the year. So that doesn't create a permanent solution for them, but it buys them some time. If they can come to terms with Thomas and get him to, say, maybe a 2-year contract that possibly, I'm going to say it's probably going to take closer to $3 million. At least that's what he's looking for. At least it's believed he wants at least a 2.8 that Kyrou got, if not a little bit more. And St. Louis right now obviously has issue with that. Otherwise, we'd have ourselves a contract. So at this point, though, there's been some concerns over a potential offer sheet. I know Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic talked about this in a recent article here today and wondered about the possibility of Coyotes general manager Bill Armstrong, who used to work in St. Louis, obviously dealt a lot with the amateur side of the game, was heavily involved with drafting Robert Thomas, and wondered if they might take a stab at making that happen. Like, for example, a player like Thomas might really, to me, in my opinion, be a prime candidate, like we saw with Kotkaniemi, because those huge money contracts, when you're talking about the real superstar names, when you have to offer 10, 11 million bucks, you're giving away the farm to get those guys. As much as you want to lend that player, do you want to give up 4 first-round picks? Probably not, right? But on these middle range guys that are not getting the huge contracts that, $2, $3, $4, $5 million range, like we saw with Kotkaniemi, they gave up 2 draft picks, obviously, a first and a third. But in the meantime, they could even get this one even cheaper, because Thomas's contract is definitely, like I said, he's probably looking close to $3 million. Let's say the Coyotes come in at 4 or close to 4, 3.5 to 4 range. You might overpay, like you seen Carolina do with Kotkaniemi. You do it on a 1-year deal. It seems to be a good strategy. You get him to your team. You work out maybe the next extension, maybe a little bit cheaper to kind of offset, and you get him that money that he's looking for on a longer term basis. For example, if a contract falls between like 2.5 and 4.1 million, the compensation is only a second round pick. That's not, to get a second round pick for Robert Thomas, to me, would be a steal of a deal. I mean, he's a great young player who's still not fully reached his potential, right? So there's no guarantee this happens. Arizona is not the only team out there that could look to do this. To me, Arizona is a prime candidate, given the knowledge of Bill Armstrong of the player, being so involved in the drafting of him. And secondly, they've stockpiled a lot of picks lately. If they can get a good young player like Thomas to be part of the solution moving forward, hey, to me, that's a move I would consider. But you could also look to other teams, like a Detroit Red Wings, for example, even Ottawa. They all have lots of picks, lots of room for cap-wise that they can make that kind of deal. Like Ottawa, for example, has been heavily rumored to be looking for another center. Robert Thomas might fit nicely into that number 2, number 3 role, along with a guy like a Shane Pinto, and of course you got Josh Norris. That might be something to consider. I mean, the other thing, too, is obviously Robert Thomas shares an agent with the Tkachuk boys, Craig Oster, who is, of course, their uncle. But when Robert Thomas first went to St. Louis, he lived with Keith Tkachuk and his family, knows Matthew and Brady very, very well. Not suggesting that that influence would create an offer sheet scenario from the teams they play for, but I'm just saying it would be something that, obviously, those teams might be interested in. And obviously, the agent is obviously working on deals for like Brady as well. So not to say that there's any kind of influence in that regard, but obviously, it's not a huge surprise of the hardball contract negotiations, because that just seems to be Craig Oster's style. Like, he really pushes hard to get the best deal for his client. We've seen him represent, like I said, not only the Tkachuk guys, but a lot of other players, top names, and it's hard bargaining. It's just, you want to get your value, right? We'll see what happens, but in my opinion, and I agree with this article from Rutherford, that he very well could be a prime candidate given for an offer sheet here, given the small amount of compensation going the other way, should the offer sheet turn out to be successful. Now, I also want to talk about Evander Kane. In case you missed it, there was a significant interview on ESPN today, done by Linda Cohn, talking to Evander Kane about a lot of the allegations on off-ice stuff that's been surrounding him and his name here for the last several months, creating quite a hectic offseason, and obviously not one that I'm sure he's overly thrilled with how things have played out. He's been accused of a lot of bad things. This was an opportunity for him to answer questions publicly, try, I guess, to make an attempt at clearing his name, talk about where things are at. And here's basically what he said. Just to kind of summarize everything, he did admit that he's made bad financial choices, which is obviously part of the reason that led to the bankruptcy. He also admitted that in the past he's had a gambling problem, which contributed to the bankruptcy. He's also said that he sought help to recover from being addicted to gambling. He's also denied all the allegations made by his soon-to-be ex-wife or estranged wife, who accused him of gambling on NHL games, including games that he himself played in. He was asked point blank by Linda Cohen, have you bet on NHL games? The answer is no. She asked him if he ever bet on NHL games that he played in. He said no. And she asked him if he's ever adjusted his play or played poorly on purpose to influence the outcome of a game because of a bet. And he said no. Now, of course, he clearly denies everything, which I guess is good because you really hope it's not true for his sake and for the sake of the game as well. And he does not know of or believe that there's any friction with any of his teammates. So that's all he said on the matter. To me, it would have been a good opportunity to make a statement, though, to say that he's ready to come back and play. He's ready to be a good teammate, even if he doesn't want to admit that he might not have been a good teammate. For him just to kind of say that, I'm ready to come back. I'm ready to be a great teammate. I'm ready to work hard. Just, to kind of give them a sense of confidence that things have changed. Would have been nice to have heard, but that was not the case in this interview. He also went on to say that he feels very confidently that he will be exonerated from these allegations and that the NHL will clear him of any wrongdoing. Bill Daly also, I believe, made comments today that they're hoping to have the investigation and report issued on Evander Kane by the start of training camp. So obviously that would be important. It would determine whether or not there will be any kind of anything at all coming his way, or if he will be cleared. Assuming he is cleared, he likely goes to training camp and goes about his business. And as regarding the teammates stuff, I guess, I don't know if we'll know any more about that or not. I guess we'll see if there's any reaction or anything from anybody in the Sharks organization, but I doubt there will be, publicly at least. So we'll have to see where that goes. But at this point, he's confident he's going to be cleared. And like I said before, you can say a lot of things about Evander Kane. He's certainly even admitted today, and I think it's fair to say based on what we've seen publicly, that he's made some bad choices. I'm not convinced that he was necessarily gambling on games in the NHL, or at least on games that he played in. He was one of their top players. Whether or not he bet on any other NHL games that he didn't play in, I have no idea on that, and I really wouldn't have an opinion one way or the other. It just didn't, there was nothing obvious to me about his play or how their games went down that suggested anything might be, funky in that regard. So I'd say he's probably will be cleared and that stuff, but as far as everything, it's just really difficult to say. Hopefully we can get a report here soon from the NHL and just kind of put this to bed and try to move on from it. Now, the other player I did want to talk about here today, though, quickly, was Kirill Kaprizov. Now, this is not a trade rumor. This is kind of just my opinion based on all the reports we've seen. But out of all the negotiations going on in the RFA world right now, and there's still some big names out there, Kaprizov's not the only one. We've obviously just talked about Thomas and how that negotiation is not going well. You kind of get the feeling that maybe Kaprizov, this is just me, that maybe he just doesn't want to be there in Minnesota. I mean, for a guy who's played one season, a shortened season, limited number of NHL teams, just won Rookie of the Year, had a ton of success, clearly can see that he's a big part of that franchise. For what we're hearing about what the offers are for him to get like a $9 million contract at various term lengths, it's hard to imagine what the problem could be to make him want to sign and play. And based on everything else that we've seen lately as well, and as far as the processing goes, it's pretty much a given that even if they can come to terms over the next little bit before camp, that he will likely miss all or at least a big chunk of training camp, maybe the start of the season, because it takes a fair bit of time to get the work visa, to get him over to North America. He's going to have to go through a short quarantine and then start to practice with the team. So, it's a lot of work and a big process to go through, and it's hard to imagine where things are at in that regard. I know one of our viewers made a good point that as far as where things, and this is just us talking, we really don't know what to it, but if you look at the fact that there's no other Russians on the team, he's far away from home, it's a major difference in culture and way of life and everything like that. It's certainly something to be considered. Obviously, I know a lot of players from Europe like to have a few fellow countrymen or whatnot around. It certainly makes the transition a lot easier, especially when you're younger and first coming over to North America in that regard. So I don't know. I mean, it just seems like with all the negotiating going on and all the offers that have been made, to me, that's the negotiation that concerns me the most, ending amicably. And I just wonder if is it a situation where maybe he does want to move? Now, Minnesota's been linked to some big trades out there like a Jack Eichel, and I just wonder, could they ever get to a point that they would consider using him as a trade piece to land Jack Eichel? I mean, I know Minnesota Wild fans probably don't want to hear that, and I don't blame you. You finally get this player you've been waiting for 5 years to come over to the NHL. He absolutely tears it up, lights it up, was exciting to watch. Wins Rookie of the Year, and now he won't sign. And this is just, like I said, this is just me talking that I have concerns over where things are heading. There's no information from an NHL insider right now suggesting that they're going to trade him. So I don't want you to panic or anything like that. This is just, concern on my part. But it just really makes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes and if they can come to a resolution here, or if it could lead to that. At some point, you think Bill Guerin and the Wild have to weigh all options, right? I mean, you got to do what's best for the team, and clearly he makes the team better. But if he's not going to be there or doesn't want to be there, then maybe you have to weigh out other options. So let me know how you think the Kaprizov situation resolves itself. How does it get settled? Does he sign? What kind of term? Could it lead to a trade? Let me know your thoughts down below, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.